This podcast is brought to you by Penji. Penji is a creative subscription service that gives you access to pre-vetted, agency-trained creatives from all over the world. From graphic design to illustrations to social media management and web development, it's all included for one monthly price. It's time to say goodbye to the hassle of searching for top-notch creative talent. With Penji, you get quality and consistency delivered right to your inbox every day. Carefully crafted for you by humans, so meet your new creative team today. Head over to penji.co for more and enter the coupon code located within the podcast show notes.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us on the Fully Managed podcast. Thank you, Stephanie, so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
It is my pleasure. Hello.
Hello, and I don't know actually which day this will come out at this moment in time, but it's a Friday, so happy Friday if it is still a Friday when this is posted.
Let's just say happy Friday, whatever day it is.
Yeah, I hope that it feels like Friday for whoever's watching,
yes,
regardless of what day it is today. But Stephanie, I'm so excited to start on today because I think this is one of the more personalized games that I've created, and I think think it's very fun. So I'm excited. Okay, so this game is called Plot Twist or Through Line. So it's referencing the theater background that you will probably get into later, and everyone will, everyone gets a little teaser right now of like your background into this point. So, okay. So what you're going to do, how this game works is, I think maybe it's kind of self-explanatory, I don't know, but I'm going to give you a little scenario, and you're going to tell me whether you think it's a plot twist or a through line.
Oh, okay. Let's do it.
Also, for everyone who doesn't know what through line means, I should probably preface that. Everyone knows what a plot twist is. I think a through line, maybe if you're not in theater or, you're not in movies or whatever it is, a through line just means that it's connected to the plot. So it's just for everyone that does not know. Anyway, let's get started.
Okay.
So this first one is theater background versus advertising leadership. So which was the plot twist and which became the through line in how you tell stories?
Interesting. Well, I think the through line was having a theater background because it's so interesting to me, because when I would tell people that I was majoring in theater, I would get this look like, oh. And I've told this story before, but I grew up with a lot of people who wanted to be theater students, who wanted to study the arts, and whose parents said, well, if you do that, I won't pay for your education. And so with no disrespect to communications, which is a great major and teaches you so many wonderful things, a lot of the people that I knew who wanted to be theater students defaulted to communications.
That's so funny.
And, I took many communications classes, and I actually think it's a really fascinating discipline. But if what you want to be is a theater student, and you can't because your parents won't pay for your education, communications was sort of the cousin. My mother, on the other hand, when I said, I think I'm going to major in theater, said, wonderful. What a great idea. I love this for you. And that frankly has been the through line of my life, which is that my mother 100% believes that whatever it is I want to do is probably a very good idea, and I should absolutely do that. So what's interesting, though, about having had a theater education, and I studied acting, I studied directing, and as I got further into it, I really was drawn to the notion of being a director, because I loved that big picture, and I loved the notion of creating a world. So that actually has become a through line in my own life into my advertising career. Story making, meaning making, persona building, world building. All of these are things that we do as part of the craft of advertising. I would say that advertising was the plot twist. I worked in the professional theater when I graduated from school. I honestly thought with my whole heart I was going to go off and be a theater professor somewhere. And my real There's so much noise in my house right now that I have a dog click-clacking around. My husband is blowing his nose. But
Oddly
anyway,
enough, I
welcome to
can't
my
hear it.
world.
Don't worry, it's only distracting you. I actually can't hear any of it, which is amazing.
It's not, definitely not distracting me. I just welcome to our winter habitat. So as I was saying, I really thought I was going to be everybody's favorite theater professor at some small liberal arts college somewhere. Like I really had a vision of myself, up at, upstate New York at Marist or a school like that. And I would teach theater and maybe I would be the head of the theater department. And I really believed this was going to be my career trajectory. And early in my career, I had the opportunity to go work at MTV Networks, which I took with the thought that I would work there for a couple of years while I applied to graduate school and I would bank some money and I would have a good health insurance plan. And I got to MTV Networks, and my first day at MTV Networks, Sheryl Crow played an impromptu concert in our cafeteria. And I thought, I am not going to grad school. I work at MTV. Where am I going? And so then I thought, okay, I'm going to work in television and I'm going to make TV. And so I was actually recruited into my first advertising agency because I was working on the .coms for what was then called the Nickelodeon family. And so it was nick.com and nickjr.com and tvland.com. And so I was working on, I was the editorial director and a content producer for tvland.com primarily. And I was writing tons of editorial content about classic television. And I got recruited by my first agency because they needed somebody who could write and who also understood editorial work, who understood content. So that for me was a real plot twist. I showed up at my first advertising job and I didn't know how to use a Mac computer because I'd only ever worked on PCs. I literally had to call a friend and say, how do I turn this thing on? Like I didn't know how to. So I
that would be me.
I didn't know what a deck was. People would say like, oh, it's in the deck. And I'd be like,
yes.
Where is the deck?
Oh, fake it till you make it. I love that.
I definitely faked it. So the through line is theater education. The plot twist was advertising.
I love that. I mean, it's funny too because like ending up in like where you are today is what the plot twist led to, which I love. I think that's an amazing. I mean, it's an amazing journey, and I think it's almost more linear than you think. I mean, like the background of theater almost makes sense in advertising because you have the same goals in a way. I mean, like you both have stories that you need to understand well, and sometimes, I mean, if you've ever been in an improv group, sometimes you need to create a story. So at least it's not as completely out of thin air when you're doing it in advertising.
Yes, and Shannon.
But no, I mean, I think that I loved this game because I knew that it'd really give a glimpse into everything slowly, so everyone gets a little bites of everything going on. So I'm going to move on to another segment before we go into all the questions, so that because we're already off to a really good start of like getting glimpses into what you're doing. Okay, so the next one is going to be following curiosity versus following a clear plan. Which one actually guided your non-linear career path?
Following curiosity is my plan. Yes, people have asked me before, what was your plan? And the answer is I had no plan. My plan was to have a very good time and to live an ethical life. To be of use is very important to me, to be of use to others, to be of use to my family, to be of use to my community, to always protect my particular kind of weirdness and the way that my mind works. And but really, if I had a plan, it was to simply be like, "Oh, that looks interesting. What's that?" and go over there and check it out. And I have failed. I mean, failure is a wonderful instructor, and not to quote my mother again, but I'm going to. One thing my mom always has said to me is the only people who fail are people who try. So when I would audition for something and not get cast, and I'd be really sad, and she'd say, well, the result is the same as if you hadn't auditioned, except now you've got to get better at auditioning because you've done it. Mm-hmm. Or tried to publish, an essay or a story and, been rejected. So I would say that being curious and being open and being flexible and being slow to judge have really been the plan. There was no plan other, and make enough money to eat. I mean, you do have to, there are realities in our lives, and finding a way to make a living, if you are a creative person, is paramount. I have a daughter who literally just this morning went back to school for the second semester of her sophomore year, and she goes to an art school in Chicago. She is her own special kind of weird, just like we all are. She is a writer, and she is an actor, and she is a cartoonist and an artist. And she talks often about she wants to get a job that has nothing to do with any of that. She's looking at being a landscaper this summer, working with at a garden center, or working with someone who does landscaping, because she wants work that can be physical and that can be tangible. You can point to it and say, I planted the tree. It's planted. Now it grows. I did that. And leave her creative work as something a bit more open-ended and ambiguous. That's one way to do it. Total respect for that. Other people have gifts, have craft, have abilities, and that's how they make their living. I have never been anything in my life but a writer. I honestly, I went into the theater because I thought maybe I wanted to be an actor. And then I became a director because I loved the creation of worlds, and I loved working with others. I loved the collaborative nature of it. But if you ask me professionally, what is the one thing I do? I write, and I don't know how to do anything else.
No, I really love that your career path is kind of driven not only by curiosity, which is very clear, but also just by liking doing something. Because I think that it's really, unfortunately, and we kind of talked about this the last time we spoke, about how it's unfortunately frowned upon to explore sometimes, and I think because it seems like you don't have a unified goal, maybe, or whatever it may be to other people. But I think that having different places of professional growth is really valuable. I think that the people that are best at their job, specifically in marketing, but I think in so many other facets, have experience in so many other things, because it helps them take themselves out of the role that they're in and view a problem in a different perspective, where I feel like when you're doing something for so long, sometimes it's difficult to get out of that headspace.
Yeah, Shannon, I think you hit on something important, which is, I think right now we are all so afraid to make a mistake because the stakes feel so high in every way. People are afraid to explore. They're afraid to make a mistake. They're afraid of looking foolish. They're afraid of being judged. They're afraid of, failing. And I get it, because the stakes are high. The stakes are high for you make one financial mistake and the consequences can be dire. You lose a job. The consequences can be dire. And I think that the loss there of not having a safe place to screw up is we lose a lot of what makes us all unique we lose a lot of what makes us different. I love Sinners. I thought Sinners was amazing. I cannot believe that a horror movie just got the most nominations.
I'm so happy about it because
in
horror
history.
this year was so amazing for horror movies, and I
Amazing.
love horror movies, and they never get nominated.
Well, I mean, Ryan Coogler just changed the game for everyone, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that, to me, how many people probably said, no, it's going to be a small movie. People are criticizing it, that a horror movie. But did you watch it? Because it's so much more than a horror movie. So that's where I get excited when I see somebody taking that risk, when I see somebody coloring outside the lines, which is kind of a trite way to say it, but it's really hard to do right now, because everything is so expensive. And if you get sick and we're the stakes are high. So for myself, at least, I try to create in my own world, a place where we can make mistakes. Because most mistakes are just, well, that didn't work.
And then you just move on, and you learn something too. And I think it's more difficult to learn from successes because you don't go out of the box. And successes, I guess, is like maybe not even the right word, but like if you are consistently always told that you were right, you're never going to explore other options that could be better than maybe the outcome that you have right now. And it doesn't mean that the outcome isn't good right now, but if you're not trying other things, then you don't know what you could be doing better. And unfortunately, experimenting is terrifying to a lot of people, and change is terrifying, but it is really valuable when wanting to stand outside of the box too.
Yeah. And also, rejection, failure, doesn't mean they're right. How many stories have we heard about someone who, was rejected by 41 publishers, and then the 42nd publisher said yes, and then it became, I don't know, pick the Hunger Games. So there is, there's a fine line between, choosing another path, adapting, making a change, and sticking to your guns because you believe in what you're doing. And I really do think the ability to fail with grace, but still retain what you believe in, still keep fighting for what you think is right, whether that's in your art, whether that's in your politics, whether that's in your relationships, is a skill. It's a skill we build.
Yeah, and it's something that I think it gets easier when you get used to failing. I don't know, because I think you have to think of it in a positive light of that, what did I learn from this that I can do better for next time? And I think that when you focus too much on I did all of this wrong, then that's where they're gonna start beating you down a little bit. But you just have to think about it in a different way that it can be helpful for you in the future, and maybe not keep doing the same thing over and over again. I don't know. I think Albert Einstein with his quote, I think that's the quote, right? That makes you insane. Maybe sometimes try that. If you're the Albert Einsteins of us, I don't know. Yes. But something I would really like to ask you about, because I'm curious. So, okay, having writing be your discipline, at least, that you refer to as what it is inherently part of you. Being a creative director includes a lot of different elements of or at least what you're referring to as outside of that wheelhouse. How was it kind of getting a grasp of these other creative disciplines that maybe weren't your ideal one or your favorite, or that you were less familiar with until being in this role?
That's a really that's a great question. So, and I mean that I'm not trying to fill time. I honestly think that's a great question, because the answer is it was not easy for me, and it wasn't intuitive, and I didn't come to it naturally. I am really good at hearing and seeing. When I would read plays, when I was a theater student, my mentor said to me once, when you read the play, do you see it or do you hear it? And I always heard it.
Yes,
I could hear all the voices. I could hear all the line readings. I had no idea what it would look like. But
I
when
don't even see pictures in there. My brain doesn't see pictures at all. So I don't even know how to picture something. That's just its concept.
Yeah, apparently there's actually something that has to do with your mind's eye. I was just reading about this the other day, where there's a spectrum of the ability to visualize, and some of us don't have a lot, and some of us can see whole detailed worlds.
I know, it's so interesting.
Yeah. Now, I, on the other hand, have an ongoing internal monologue that is just talking all the time. I can read words on the page and skim. But if you said to me, describe an apple, I would say to you, well, round, red, stem. One of my closest friends when I was growing up was an artist, and we were, one time we were driving somewhere, and it was fall, and she said, "What colors do you see?" And I said to her, "Orange." And she's like, "I see green and red." And she started naming all these colors, and I was like, "Yeah, orange." So I had to learn how to visualize, and when I say I'm good at seeing, I don't mean, I mean, I can see words. But what I couldn't do was see art. And it was always coming up in feedback I received when I was trying to advance in my career. People like my own creative directors, others would say to me, my art directors, designers would say, "You have 1,000 words. Always. You always have 1,000. You can describe the feelings, the nuance, what it should sound like, how it should feel, but what does it look like? You don't know. You don't ever know." So I actually took an art appreciation class to learn how to see. And it's still not natural and intuitive to me, but I make it my business to ask and learn and listen from people who have that innate ability. Every designer that I work with, every art director, I always ask them, why this type versus that type? And I'm a real type snob, which is interesting because the words have, and it's not because of what it looks like, it's because the words have feeling. And if the type is wrong, it doesn't convey what the word feels like.
I completely understand that.
Which is a very different way of seeing than the way that, for a lot of art directors I've worked with, they're like, I don't even care what the word says. Like, it's all about the shape. Like this was amazing. I was working with a partner once, and she said, "Oh, I really hate the Q. Like the Q in a particular typeset." And I was like, "The Q? What are you saying?" And she was disgusted by it. She's like, "The tail, I hate the Q." And I was just like, sure, okay. So I guess, the question is, how do you get good at the things you're not good at? And the answer is you study them. Like, you don't try to hide from the fact that this isn't your wheelhouse. You don't lie about it. You certainly don't pretend to know more than you know. You are very respectful to the people who have that innate ability, and you make it your business to learn. I will never be a designer. I will never be as good an art director as my partners have been. But I have cultivated the ability to speak a language that is visual with humility and respect. And frequently I will say, "I'm going to try and tell you what I mean. You may have to help me get there." It feels a little floozy. I mean, I once described a trumpet. I was like, "I don't know, that trumpet is slutty." And everybody looked at me like, "It's a slutty trumpet?" And I was like, "Yeah, don't you hear it? It's like a really slutty trumpet."
I get that so much.
And it needs to be a more refined trumpet. That trumpet's too slutty. So I guess to put this was a very long answer to a relatively simple question. Which would be the theme. That's what it's going to say on my headstone. This was a very long answer to a relatively simple question. I guess the answer is, don't front. I mean, there's a difference between faking it till you make it, which is like, I can own this room. even if there's a voice inside of you saying, no, you can't, or I deserve to be on this podcast, even if a voice inside of you is like, why would anybody want to hear what you have to say? Right. That's when you have to fake it. When like the little evil, anxious voice inside of you is trying to tell you that you don't have ability, but you should not fake knowing things you don't. Just be honest.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was out there at the library getting big art books and like trying to understand, you know, like what makes this work? What is the story in the visual as opposed to the story in the words? And I'm always learning.
No, and I really appreciate you mentioning this because one, I think it takes a very humble attitude to even like admit what you don't know. And I also think that it's a really important to make the distinction that like I think it's almost expected specifically when any role, I mean, at least I see when any role is related to marketing, that if you're creative, you are comprehensively creative, as if there is not sectors of how someone can be creative. Like, yeah. I think that it's an understanding sometimes that like someone that thinks technically can't be someone that thinks creatively. And I think creative is very objective. Like the term itself can mean so many things. Like you can be innovative, and I think that's a form of creativity. Like you can create inventions, and I think that's being creative, but that doesn't mean that it's creative like it's artistic. And that is something that I think that sometimes it's almost expected to just sublimate into like a creative culture when you're creative in one sense. And that doesn't come easy to, I think, a lot of people who are used to one discipline or very like, excel at one discipline, because it's hard to trick your brain.
Yes. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No.
You're touching on something that is actually very important to me, which is getting over your own snobbery. I think the world is full of snobs. You know, I think that it's become very chic to be disaffected, to not be impressed, to be a snob. And for better or for worse, that is just not something I have ever been able to cultivate. I had to learn how to be critical. That was another skill I had to learn. My husband says to me all the time, you're a lover, you love to love. And it's true. I do love to love. Like I am always looking for, you know, the gold in the floss, I think is the expression. But I do, that is my natural inclination. My natural inclination is to look for the 30 seconds of the movie that everyone says is terrible, but oh my God, did you see the 30 seconds where she picked up the button and she looked at, that was amazing. So my natural inclination has always been whatever the opposite of snobbery is. And I think snobbery is a real killer of creativity. I think that snobbery is a real killer of connection, of our innate humanity. We're all creative. Humans create. That's what we do. Now, you may be a coder and not tell anyone that you write poetry at night because you're embarrassed, or maybe you think your poems aren't good, but coding and poetry are very close together in terms of rigor. You know, you may be an art director who works in textiles. You may be a writer who paints. You know, our brains are creative, and you know, there's this thing in neurology: what fires together wires together. So you know, when you're activating different parts of your brain, they activate at the same time. So that's one of the ways you can learn how to see or learn how to write. Is you wire together the things you're not good at to the things that you are good at. This is a whole different podcast, but
no, I love talking about it philosophically.
Yeah, but I think that for me, I had to learn, not because I was worried about hurting anybody's feelings or anything like that. Like there's always a way to deliver feedback in a way that is constructive and respectful and helpful. But it was more that I was so naturally inclined to just be like, I love this part, that I had to learn how to say, this part is great. We really need to talk about the rest of this. I love that here's an example for a very typical, there's no one person in mind, but a very typical thing, like with someone who is early in their career. They will have amazing craft. They'll have amazing ideas. They can make beautiful things, whether it's writing a manifesto or creating some kind of magnificent, piece of film. And then they have no idea how to sell it. They walk in the room and they're like, I made this.
Yeah.
And we say, it's beautiful. And, so the part you have to learn is, okay, well, how does it connect to the strategy? How does it solve the business problem? How do you walk in the room and in exactly 1 minute get everybody listening, believing, trusting? How do you get them to buy in? Right? So that's a really important part of the job. We don't really teach it, it's interesting to me what we teach and what we don't. And this gap is becoming more and more interesting to me the further along in my own career I get. We hold people accountable to standards and for parts of the job that we don't really coach them on as creatives. So you're a creative mind, you are a creative person, maybe you went to an arts college, and then we say to you, go sell this to the clients, and we don't really tell you what that means.
Yeah, that's terrifying for someone that's an introvert too. That's terrifying. Like for someone that, and like a lot of creatives, I feel like I find that is the case. So it's sometimes very difficult to adapt. Okay, hey, go in front of. So you're the line of defense between this person liking us. Please go.
Do you want a blazer? No? You should go get one. No, don't buy a blazer. No one needs a blazer. If you want a blazer, go get a blazer. I don't care.
For the Real Housewives. A lot of them have blazers.
Yeah, wear a blazer. It feels good to wear a blazer sometimes. Put on your blazer, your pitch blazer. But that's the part that is... it's not even the creative part, right? But we exist in a world where mostly the creative work we make is commercial. It's commercially driven. Even if you are an artist, the paintings have to sell, right? Even if you're making theater, you need to sell tickets. Mm-hmm. So there certainly is creativity that doesn't have commercial purpose, and that's a whole different world than the one we're in. We exist in a world where we are using creativity to solve business problems and to sell things. And I think that owning that as well is a really important part of the job. Now, that doesn't mean you can sacrifice craft. It doesn't mean you can sacrifice ingenuity. It doesn't mean you shouldn't strive for excellence. You absolutely should. You want everything that you make to be original and interesting and engaging and excellent and beautifully made. However, if it has nothing to do with the brief you were given, you still are not doing the job. And that to me has become a very interesting place, which is, how do we take the creativity and teach people how to do the business?
I completely agree. I think that it is, and I think that's the part that kind of doesn't come naturally to most people as well. So it's funny that it's not trained often and it's expected, because it isn't like, I think especially in creative positions, like authenticity is something that's so important when creating, because like that's yours, and you have like emotional attachment sometimes to your work, if not all the time, when you create something that you're proud of. And so to have to explain to someone, that might not see it the same way as you, that is what it is, that's terrifying. Like to put your emotions on the line and try to sell something to someone that may not be as receptive as you is really a daunting task. And so like it's very important to really understand like where someone is coming from when they're learning the skill, but also to not just expect that of them, which I really appreciate you shedding light on, because it's not something that I think is very normally trained.
It's not. And it's interesting too, because I've gone to a lot of leadership. That's my dog going out for his walk. I've gone to a lot of leadership training and a lot of, those kinds of trainings, and none of them are specifically for creatives. They take like the same training that they do for the bank and the insurance company. It's this kind of generic like leadership. And then you go into a room with like some people are writers and some people are art directors and some people are engineers and some people are coders and you try to teach them how to be leaders. And without fail, everyone's like, this has nothing to do with me. I don't understand what this does,
Yeah.
So I think there is some level of specialization that needs to be acknowledged when you're dealing with a creative team. You've got a creative team that is doing creative work, sitting in the middle of big business, and bridging that gap is really important. But the other thing that I will say is you got to get your feelings out of it. You can have feelings about the work that you do for yourself. You cannot have feelings about the work you certainly be proud, certainly care, but you can't get your feelings hurt because it doesn't belong to you. The work that you do for your clients belongs to them. The work that you do for your agency belongs to your agency. And it's a hard truth to take in, but I also think it's a really important one. You should care. You should take pride. It's not about you. And if it is about you, then you should deal with, the personal attack. If you are being attacked versus like we say all the time at my agency, we are hard on the work and gentle on each other. Mm-hmm. And not everybody can do that. Right. Yeah. So sometimes the work is being criticized and you hear a personal criticism, you got to separate those two. Now, if somebody says, you did a bad job, well, that's a whole different kind of feedback.
I don't really want that client.
No, I don't want that client. So, but I do want to share with you one of my favorite quotes from a creator, which has always inspired me, which is Charles Schulz, who wrote Peanuts, the Charlie Brown comic. One of the things that Charles Schulz said is that writer's block is for amateurs. And I just remember thinking to myself, like, yeah, that's right. Because you never hear about like a firefighter who's like, I've got firefighter block today. I can't go rescue you. Like, no, there's no such thing as firefighter block. Like you go fight the fire, and there's no such thing as surgeon block. And it's like, I'm not feeling it. Yeah, it's like, nope, the surgery is going to happen. So to me, if we hold ourselves to the same standards of professionalism as every other profession, I don't want my accountant having accounting block if it's the 14th and my taxes are due. And to that same extent, you got to learn how to manufacture it. You got to learn how to find it. You got to learn how to do it, how to do the work. You need a system and a process and a way to move past those blocks. And I think that is also a really important piece of doing the work. Yes, we all get creatively blocked, but your job as a professional is to know how to dissolve that block and get the work done.
I think this is a really good place to end on because we're coming up on time, but I think that it was a really comprehensive point too. I think that this is something that a lot of creatives struggle with, and I love to ask about. So I'm really happy that you shed light on it because I think that it is there. I think that there's a list of struggles that I've categorized in my head from talking to creatives, and block is something that is very difficult for people to get past sometimes. And I think sometimes it really has to do more with burnout and not with ability. And I think that's sometimes what people consider block as well. But Stefanie, this was such a treat. I had so much fun. I didn't even realize how much time passed because I was having so much time in this conversation. We talked about philosophy. We talked about your very, very fun and interesting career journey. And I really appreciate you coming on and chatting with me because this was a blast.
I loved it. I would love to come back anytime.
I would really love that.
And my LinkedIn is open if anybody wants to, talk about writer's block or professional training of creatives or make a friend. I love meeting new people. Shannon, I think I mentioned to you that Pre-pandemic, I always had a policy where if somebody who was entering the early career, coming out of college or the first couple of years of their career, ever wanted to go to breakfast and talk about the business, I would meet you at the Hollywood Diner. So, doors open. If you, I'm still available for breakfast at the Hollywood Diner for anyone who wants to just talk about the business. It's an incredible way to make a living, and I also, having spent time in PR. Oh, you're not supposed to call it PR anymore. Spending time in communications.
I didn't know there was a chapter on this.
Yeah, no, edit the PR part. It's not what it is, communications. But having spent time in the communications field, the work we do is highly influential. It can introduce stories into the world. It can change minds. It can influence what people spend their money on. It can influence what people believe to be true about beauty and health and themselves. And it's not to be taken lightly. We do important work.
I completely agree. And I appreciate the shout out for helping others, because I really think that that's something that people are really scared to ask for help, like myself included in my daily life. So I really appreciate you saying that. And for everyone that is looking for Stefanie, her LinkedIn will be in the description so that you guys can chat if you ever need any help. And thank you, Stefanie, so much for being so forthcoming and honest with everything that you've dealt with throughout your career. I really think that it is going to be incredibly helpful to our audience. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Shannon. Great to see you.
Thank you as well. And thank you everyone for listening. We'd be nothing without you. I hope you have a lovely day, and hopefully it seems like Friday even if it's not. Thank you so much, guys. Bye-bye.